The Coen Brothers actually ripped this story off from Game of Thrones, if you'll remember in the first season. Giving away his sister to better his position, brother dies.
Hello and welcome to a Loyalty Cup discussion. This week we're diving into Buster Scruggs. We're doing a top 3 of this thing. We're going to spoil it pretty soon, in just a few seconds actually. So if you want to avoid spoilers, click on something else. Click on something else in our channel.
The Halloween one is really good and underrated.
Yeah. We would love if you watch the Halloween video. Before we dive into any of that, I'm Richie.
I'm Sean.
I'm Andy.
Andy, why don't you tell us what this movie's all about?
So the movie Ballad of Buster Scruggs is a new Western anthology by the Coen Brothers. Originally written as 6 short segments, it was supposed to be released as almost short stories or episodes, but they eventually culminated into a movie that's now on Netflix. So it deals with death and terror of the Old West.
Terror. So these 3 picks doesn't mean they're the best, right? We're not the judge of that, but we are the judge of what our favorites are. And so we picked what our top 3 of the 6 in this movie are.
Let's start with the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Personally, it's my favorite. I think we all enjoyed it. You got Buster Scruggs, played by Tim Blake Nelson, who does a fantastic job of singing and shooting. I'm a real big fan of Old West vernacular, the way they speak, and
there's a cadence to it.
Right,
yeah. And then intellect too. They use the fanciest, prettiest words.
It's smart, dumb talk, and I loved it. So Buster Scruggs is hilarious. He sings songs. He's notorious through the West for singing and shooting. Outside of just the titular character, there is a lot of gun violence. It's funny, lots of song and dance. It really just hit everything for me, and I was actually disappointed when, spoiler, Buster Scruggs gets shot in the head, because then I thought, oh, no more Buster. And then I was hoping that the rest of the anthology would deal with Buster Scruggs in some regard, which it doesn't, which was a disappointment. But that segment hit all the sweet spots for me.
Do you typically like the way that this implemented music, people just breaking out into song in a movie? Is that typically your bag?
No, but I think because it was mostly just this first segment that it sort of worked and set up the tragedy of the whole rest of the film.
Yeah, I think it was so utterly charming and so funny, and it was over the top in the right ways. It didn't worry so much about the performances, right? This isn't High School Musical. It's so much more about like the way that it's telling the story and the mood.
No, yeah, it was just because I'm not a fan of musicals.
Yeah,
I just really don't care for them, I
guess.
And
wait, is Gummo a musical?
There are musical aspects to it.
Okay.
Music definitely plays a part. But just the humor and the absurdity of breaking out into song, when it's funny, I love musicals.
When the hook is the man you just killed.
And while his brother is weeping in disbelief, holding his ruined face in his lap, and you're singing a song celebrating you having just killed him a moment earlier.
Well, and I think that the comedy of the first segment allowed viewers of the rest of the movie to understand that any optimisms can be quickly chopped down.
It did set the tone for the rest of the film. Is it a tone I enjoyed? Maybe not. It's kind of a bummer. But
it's difficult to endure, for sure.
So that was my favorite segment, the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the first segment of 6.
It really is like the way that you see the Coen Brothers have fun in other movies, right? You'd see it in Old Brother, Where Art Thou? There'll be this certain exchange of dialogue, and it's really quick and witty and funny, and it'll end with like kind of like a slapstick sort of joke. This was a good, solid chunk of a movie that was pure that, and it was so much fun. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, the part when Buster Scruggs shot off the guy's fingers one by one, I was not rolling on the floor laughing, but I was laughing more than any other part of the film.
Were you laughing your ass off?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Big fan of violence in movies, and so these incredible bursts of intense violence I enjoyed very much.
All right, so our next favorite is All Gold Canyon.
Featuring Tom Waits.
Mostly just him, huh? He's one of 2 characters, basically.
Starring
Tom
Waits.
And he carries it. He does a great job at it. He's the entire time watching his kind of methodical struggle, him seemingly like enjoying it despite how difficult it is, and him just saying out loud what is going on.
Well, and I think the fact that he's talking to himself, he's, they're prioritizing him as the main character, but also the owl and a deer or a moose or something that comes through the frame.
It's a deer.
An elk, something.
Elk, yeah.
You really do feel like he's alone in this wilderness. So that, spoiler alert, when the payoff happens, when he gets shot by this guy who had been following him, panning for gold, it's sort of unexpected.
That guy looked He just looked like the type of guy who would screw you.
He looked like a measly skunk.
Yeah. Yeah, I could like one.
It goes to show, what do you see? You see one man plying his trade. His horse, was it a donkey?
I think it was an ass.
Mule. Watch
Yeah.
your mouth. Yeah, so it's mostly a man in the wilderness, and then the next time you see a person, he's shooting our star in the back.
I did love the way that was done. You just kind of see a glimmer, and you know there's something that shouldn't be back there.
Well, he saw the
behind
shadow come over his gold.
You just see it kind of pass, and you know because you've seen this type of story before that it's building up to the part where he has everything he could have wanted. You know something's gonna go wrong, and then you just see that shadow, and you're like,
I honestly thought the shadow was the owl passing over, and
I thought so too, yeah.
it was
Come
going
get it.
It was going to implicate somehow the Earth was going to cave in on him from the little trench he built. You know,
Mm-hmm. It is almost like you're always expecting the Coen Brothers to try to teach you something, and I feel like anytime I watch these movies, I'm trying to unravel what that thing is and how it plays out in the story, and that was kind of one of them. That's like, oh, are they doing an environmental play where the Earth just kind of eats them up?
So what were they teaching us in this segment?
So we were having a longer discussion about this, right? And if there's this kind of, what I feel like is an overarching theme of just the brutalism of the West and how death is the great democratizer, right? We all die, and we're all gonna die. In this story, it's like in the West, you gotta be tough, you gotta be smart, and you gotta be cutthroat. And this guy was just tougher than the guy that tried to cheat him. So we got to see a pretty happy story of a guy who just had what it took.
And you also see, well, he doesn't steal all the eggs from the owl. He doesn't take all the little flakes of gold. He just wants his share, basically, and will leave the rest to nature.
He's sustainable. He's somebody who chooses moderation over greed. He didn't exercise greed.
So then what you have is a man, a measly skunk, coming to be greedy and murderous.
Yeah,
you know?
didn't want to work for anything, but wanted to have it all.
And in this story, which is actually counter to the theme throughout the film, you see this man succeed. Mm-hmm. You know, generally everyone just dies. The main character will die in this show. In this one, he is spared by his own resourcefulness.
We did talk about how, or what we thought he was going to do with the money when he left. So is this character like Daniel Plainview, and he's going to go back and he's going to hire a company and he's going to come people and just gut that entire mountain of gold? No.
He's going to take a little piece. Just his share.
Just enough for him to live off of. At least that's what I believe.
The reward for his hard work. That's all he wants.
Did his character have a name? Mr. Gold.
Prospector?
Mr. Waits.
Grizzled Prospector.
He also taught me a little about panning for gold. I always thought that it was like a colander situation.
Like a sieve?
Yeah, like this, it sifted out something, but you really just gotta let it flow out of the pan.
That, or maybe he was bad at it.
So we'll talk about this, our final one. I think this one particularly was my favorite, The Girl Who Got Rattled. A lot of it was, the pacing was so interesting to me. I love stories about just good, smart people just trying to get through some hardness.
People like you.
And this one was that. It was like you were presented with a tough situation, and each night they kind of just met minds and talked about it and tried to be as earnest as they could be. And then it culminated with this really rad battle from one of the characters that you weren't really thinking that hard about and you had made assumptions about that surprised you. I thought it was beautiful. I really loved it.
It really felt like one of the longer stories or segments from the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and it felt like almost a short story on its own. Like, I felt like if they released it on its own as a short outside of this anthology, it would still work and hold up, and you'd still be able to pull a lot of, importance from the story.
This particular short ends with an action sequence that I think really makes it. It was a cool story, but it really needed something to happen, and that action sequence is great. It's so good.
Yeah, it definitely needed that action sequence because up until then I was bored. I don't really care for the life on the plains. I love Oregon Trail. Certain aspects of this segment were fun, but it did seem for me to drag it towards the middle. And I understand that it was still the pacing of the plot, and they were still letting me know important things. Personally, I just get bored to death with people walking through the plains, and so the action sequence. I thought
their romance was cool. I thought it was like a non-romance romance.
About romance.
Yeah,
but it wasn't romantic at all. That's what I thought was so interesting about it.
I also think it felt really cheap to the whole story.
Yeah,
like I felt like they spent a lot of time with Zoe Kazan's character to basically build up your empathy with her, so when, spoiler alert, she shoots herself at the end, you feel all the more connected to her.
Let's talk about her character because it's pushing the helpless woman in need of male intervention.
Yeah,
kind of
the male savior.
agenda.
Yeah, damsel in distress.
Right, because
stereotype.
so we have that woman who the whole reason she's going is because she's basically going to be traded away by her brother to better his business proposition. He dies, so now she has no one to help outside of a boy who was promised a ton of money. Basically, all she can do is make friends with the guys who are leading the train. What do you call that? The train. She reaches out to them for help to survive, I guess. And
Yeah, but is she too helpless? Is she too dumb? Is she too meek? Does it come off like...
Well, that connection doesn't start from her going to them. They come to her and say, hey, this dog that you have is barking and everyone hates it. Let us shoot it for you. And she's like, okay.
So she is a helpless woman, in fact.
And I guess that's what we're asking is it hit the stereotype too heavy where this character is worth nothing, or does the character have some meat to it, you know?
See, and I bring this up just to bring up the argument.
See, I do think the character has more nuance because it isn't just a helpless woman per se, but it is that her meekness, I think, that is her greatest sort of disadvantage. She can't always speak up for herself, and she isn't so sure of what she wants to do, and it's something that they end up discussing at the end of the movie, right? They talk about how this indecision that she has is probably for the better because it opens her up to different opportunities and it lets her trust people. But I think that thing is her downfall. It's exactly what her downfall is.
Is that also just manipulation? You know?
Yeah.
So
he spoke really sweetly. He spoke with intellect, and she ate it all up. And then when the next guy spoke with authority that, listen, if we get licked, you shoot yourself in the head. And she just listened to him then too.
So is that the moral? Is that the moral that
think for yourself
and then don't shoot yourself in the head?
Because you need that to think.
Hey,
it's part of the process.
And that's one to grow on.
I'm sorry you guys didn't like the very boring romance. I really enjoyed how it built up because it was such a non-romance. It was a romance of practicality, right? And I loved this working out what would have been the real world minutia of living in the West. Like, hey, listen, there's a tax advantage we can have if we just get married. Oh, okay, great.
Well, yeah, that's just opportunity, right? That's what she's going there for in the first place. So
exactly. Hey. And he happens to be handsome. Good for her.
Good looking, Western, rugged man.
Well, and he says he wants to have kids just so they can take care of him when he gets old.
Yeah.
And that seemed really awkward that he acknowledged that.
That's the West, though.
Yeah. That's it. That's like, in that day and place, it's like, it makes the most sense. If anything, he's one of the more practical characters in the movie.
And that's kind of a theme for the West, you know? Just being... You gotta be practical.
Yeah. And that's why Buster Scruggs was shot down. He kept flipping the mirror out, you know, showing off.
He was flagrant.
He flew too close to the sun.
Caught a bullet in the face. The shootout. Mamamia.
I love, because it was paced similarly to the rest of the movie, where it was slowed down, it was explained to you, it was methodical. He, had the time to like load up, set everything up, explain to her what was going on, and as the people were going, you knew the rules, you knew the stakes.
And in a cool, collected way. And so much, he was able to tell her exactly what the situation was, prepare for it, calm her down, and also get excited for the prospect of bloodshed.
He's like, yeah, we're gonna have us a good fight.
It was the best scene in the film as a whole.
Absolutely. I love that it takes a break halfway through. The Indians circle back around, and in that time they kind of have a break. And just like what a good action movie should do, there should be storytelling in the action. And in this, you're understanding the stakes that are being re-explained to you, what exactly is going to go down. And because you understand all the rules of the game, when they come back and it goes down the way that it does, those last I feel like 90 seconds was filled with so many little surprises. The guy coming out from behind the horse, the guy getting back up and shooting him, and then you finding that the girl had killed herself. It was awesome. Does President Pierce live past this?
Hell no.
They're putting the dog down, right?
Yeah, they tried to kill him before, and now he came back. They're gonna finish the job.
Now there's definitely no reason to kill him. If we're talking pragmatism, yeah, they're gonna get rid of it. I watched this movie with my dog, and
held it close.
She did make a noise after President Pierce was shot the first time. Aww. After you think he's dead, Alec just kind of...
Then you hear 3 more bullet shots.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, the dog got away.
That was the funniest line in the movie, was when he said, I should have deputized Mr. Arthur. That guy's a crack shot.
No, I think it was the strongest in a storytelling sense. Probably the best segment, although I didn't enjoy it the most. It told a complete story that was compelling. I could see 15, 20 years down the road someone doing a full-length adaptation
Of just that. Yeah.
based on a short story or short film by the Coens.
So, we have 6 great stories. I didn't know that I wanted these. I actually wasn't expecting a lot. I was like, this is going to be a throwaway Coen. Like, they didn't work that hard on it. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I gave them 0 credit. I love Coen Brothers movies. And so to have this one be so fun, be such a delight, I'm going to watch it again soon. Because it's easy to rewatch.
With that in mind, do you think it worked well the way they structured it all together? Or should they have gone the first route, which was like kind of a miniseries style episodic version?
I like this only because it was kind of a change from the typical, but it would have been fun to see it as episodes, right? On a week to week or one at a time. I think you talked about being able to go back and rewatch the one you really liked over again.
My fast forward button doesn't work, so.
Well, I think if it were episodes, that would allow the viewer to have change their expectations. You wouldn't necessarily know it. Buster Scruggs is only in one of them. You may understand it is more of an anthology if they use the other title, or the title of the book.
I enjoyed that surprise. When Buster Scruggs died, I thought, wow, this is open waters now. They can really do whatever because I'm not even having to be tied to this single character, as much fun as he was. Well, we had a lot of fun with the movie. If you like what we're doing here, if you like movies the way that we do, please hit the subscribe button down there. Which of these segments is your favorite segment? Let us know in the comments. Thank you. Good night. Wish you and yours the very best.
God bless.